It's episode 2 of the Dynaudio versus Sony ES three-way test. Let's go. See, these are out. They've been in for a little while. Now we need to discuss a couple of things. My title of the first video was misleading. Not intentionally, but I realised from a few comments and a couple of conversations I've had since that it looked like not only were you going to get a comparison between the Dynaudio and the Sonys, there was also going to be sound bites, and there would also be various other things that weren't included in there, even though I did write that it was an introduction to the comparisons on the title. Now, it isn't my job to mislead people into watching YouTube videos. Clickbait isn't a part of my life. We don't make money from YouTube, right? We use it to show you what we do here. And these comparisons are kind of a bit of a freebie that we give away because I'm having loads of fun doing them, all right? So don't feel misled. It wasn't intentional. And I'm going to get back on topic with this one. First episode was a introduction to the comparisons. Now this project has evolved because, like I say, I'm having fun. This isn't just going to be a comparison of the Sony and the Dynaudio. I'm going to try and compare as many three-way speakers as I possibly can. It takes a little bit of time because A, the speakers need bedding in. That takes a long time. If you think a speaker needs 50 hours or thereabouts to bed in, which I firmly believe in, some don't, I definitely do. That's 50 hours of driving. Like, if you're driving half an hour a day, that's a long old time. So, you know, there's going to be gaps between the videos and stuff, but I'm going to try and compare as many three ways as we possibly can and try and keep it simple and try and keep it fun. I've created a graph on my whiteboard, which I can show you now. That almost definitely can't stay there because that's our working day whiteboard. We fill that up with all sorts of stuff every single day. So I'm going to have to create some sort of digital chart that is, to be fair, it's just to show you my conclusions, which are just that as well. They're my conclusions. I don't care if people disagree, that's up to them. It's subjective sound and fit, so that's how I feel about it. It's up to you whether you want to listen to me or not. Anyway, let's get into discussing the Dynaudio Esotec 342, which we've got in front of us. So, it's a three-way set. The system impedance is 4 ohm. This is important, okay? So the system impedance is 4 ohm. So if you're using its passive crossovers and you're running it from an amplifier, you're going to see 4 ohm. You're going to see a final load of 4 ohm at your amp, all right? If you split that crossover away, which is what we do, I don't think we've ever fitted a passive set of Dyn crossovers. They're wonderful things, the Dyn crossover. They're really good looking pieces of kit. I showed you them in the first episode. We run them active, and then your impedances change, okay? So you've got an 8 ohm tweeter, you've got an 8 ohm mid-range. So this is a 3-inch mid-range, by the way. I keep saying 4, it's because it comes in at like 110 mil wide. It's hard to install, okay? So anyway, you need to take that into consideration with your amplifier. People say that Dynaudio speakers can take a load of power. That's true. And some say they need a load of power. And that is also true, simply for the fact that they're 8 ohm drivers. So at most car audio kit is rated at 4 ohms. If you've got 200 watts at 4 ohms, you know, you're going to have 100 watts per driver, right? Which would be more than enough, but I'm plucking them figures out of thin air. I've had these running with around 600 watts It's probably the highest I've been with this mid-range, and they'll deal with it as long as it's clean. And while the mid-bass is 4 ohm, your amp will deal with that just fine. It might sound a little quiet or quieter than an equivalent set if you just strap them in, but it's only a little bit of tuning away from being spot on. So how these were fitted into the van, so as you can see here, there are gaskets and spacers. These aren't baffles, these are spacers, okay? So these go between the drivers, like so, and then between the baffle in the van, which is, you know, much thicker than this and solid, and that traps that. That's what enables this to sit flush and enables the grille to sit flush in the door build. Now the Sonys that have just gone in there have got their own spacer, which has a rebated edge and stuff like that, which makes them flush as well in the door. And any other speaker that we make is probably going to be smaller than the Dynaudio speaker, because as you can see, they're quite big for a 6.5. They have like a 7-inch footprint. Cone area or the piston area is the same, but you can see the size of this sort of flange around the outside. They're just quite large, which is good, and that's why, kind of in a nutshell, this project started with the Dynaudio set, because it's all designed around the larger driver, like these being 112 or 112.5 mil, something like that. There isn't really a 3-inch. This is a 3-inch dome, but there really isn't a 3-inch mid-range that's going to give us any stick, being stepped down from this size baffle. The tweeter on the other hand is a little bit smaller than some, so we had to make the tweeter larger. We made it the size for the Sony because the Sony is quite big. And here's how long it takes to change them over. That was 6.5 minutes. All right, it's just fantastic, isn't it? In 6.5 minutes, as long as we have the correct baffles, the correct conversion baffles that we've created and printed, we're just good to go in 6.5 minutes. That's the sort of test bed for these 3-way comparisons with the same amp, the same head unit in the same van. It could be a tin can in space. If you're taking out one set of speakers and putting in another set of speakers and not changing any other parameters, you've got, you know, a good test bed, a good sort of test area, but nothing boring about it. It's just going to be my reaction on the way that things sound and the way that I think they work. And I've got some stuff written out on the board which should explain to you in which way I'm going to break these things down. All right, let's go and have a look. Right, I hope you can all see my board. This took me ages to do. Board, graph, drawing. It's not me really. But you can see here, build, install, look, spec, sound, value. This value isn't a rating against whether, it isn't a rating against its cost, i.e. if it's expensive it's going to score down. It's its sort of perceived value at that price point, all right, rather than in comparison to something else. And HIMIF. How it makes you feel. The most important factor in all of this. How it makes you feel. If it's wicked, just leave it alone. Don't go for anything else. Alright? Total. So the total to be out of 17 is a 10-point must system. Like boxing. Alright? So it'll be marked down from 10. Each thing will be marked down from 10. This time round we're working on the Dynaudio Esotec 342 3-way setup. As just discussed. I've given it a 10 for build. I expect to give everything a 10 for build, all right? If it turns up and something's hanging off it, it'll be marked down. If it's marked up because the packaging's no good, it'll be marked down, all right? Anything should come out of its box tip top. It should stand the test of an installer fitting it. You know, it should be able to be fitted without it being marked up, and it certainly shouldn't be damaged out of the box. So I expect everything to get a 10. Install takes into consideration things like the size, things like the protrusion of the driver, the depth of the driver, how many screws it has. If it has a screw hole that's 3 mil and then it has an opening that's 6 mil that you can't get a screwdriver into, I will mark it down. All right, this has an 8 for install. At mid-range is massive. It's shallow, but it's massive. But the main reason why it gets an 8 for install, and it kills me to give it an 8, is because that mid-range has a high pass point of 700 hertz, all right? That means that you've got to pretty much get your mid-bass on axis, or at least within sort of 30 degrees of you on axis. It's a tricky thing to get a decent stage when you've got such a gap between the mid-bass and the mid-range itself. So it's a tricky thing to install. Like I say, they're large as well, so anything you need to make is going to have to be quite big, so it scores down for that. Look, 10 out of 10, it's a Dyn product, all right? I might be slightly biased, but you can write Dynaudio on anything and I'll like it, to be honest. But the grills, the plain grills, they're just lovely. Call me an old man. They got that sort of texture grey outer to the grill, the Dynaudio branding. It's all uniform all the way across. Some products and some brands, they're just kind of lost between even the three-way setup, which we'll get to in the next video. There's not much in the way of continuity between the products, but these three, you can line them up in a straight line, especially the Esotec product as well. They just look like scaled down versions of the larger driver. So yeah, 10 out of that. Specs 9, those two 8-ohm drivers. It's gonna lead a couple of people that might not understand it too well to think that they're a little bit lackluster, i.e. their amps not just performing as well as they would want it to perform. But no, it has to score down on that rather than just being three individual 4-ohm drivers. You've just got to be a little bit careful with partnering, all right? It's no big deal, but still, they can't get a solid 10 there. Sound 10, incredible, super fast. They can deal with loads of power, plenty of output if you want it, plenty of SQ if you want it as well. That MD102 is like 190 quid, the tweeter, and at that price point, I don't think there's much that can touch it, to be fair. It's a gorgeous little tweeter. The dome, if you've got your mid basses correct, the dome's just got this way of just vanishing. It just does this. All Dyn speakers have this party trick where at their sort of crossover points, they can just sort of melt away. You don't really know there's a speaker there. And bearing in mind, in our test van, that mid-range has got a real short path length, so it should be hard to not have everything slammed on the right-hand side. So, but it just has this transparency that I've never heard from any other brand of speaker. And don't get me wrong, I've heard some really incredible products, but that sort of fluid mid-range, that sort of disappearing act it does, it's just wicked. So yeah, solid 10. 900 quid, I've given it a 10 for value. At 900 quid, there's very few specialist products that can touch the 342, and that's from Dyn as well. So from Dynaudio, you could expect it to be more expensive. They could be at the £2,000 price point, and they would be a more fitting sort of buy, if that makes sense. I actually think at 900 quid they're a deal, all right? Bearing in mind as well, that's the full kit. So that's a 3-way kit that you could just put on your head unit if you wanted. I don't recommend that you do, but you could just put it on your head unit. It's a complete crossovers, fixings, grills for everything. The mids and tweaks have their fixed grill. The mid bass has got a grill that comes with it. Like, it's a whole package in a box for 900 quid. That's why I get a 10 for value. How it makes you feel. Now, you're probably already getting the gist of how a Dynaudio speaker set makes me feel. You step that up to the Esotecs and things like that, and it's just ludicrous. But when you're listening to it, when you've got that impact, when you've got the steering wheel in your hand and you're driving along, sun's out, music's on, you're listening to your speakers, that's what this is about. This is single-handedly the most important part of this whole test, is the how it makes you feel points, all right? And these make me feel wicked. I love listening to them. I love seeing them there. I love certain dynamic swings where I'm like, oh, fair play, you're really going for it, And yeah, it's wicked. All running from that little Sony amp as well. I've got to do a video about that thing. It is a badass little amplifier. Totals 67. There we go. That's my Dynaudio scores, okay? As you can see, I've kind of pre-filled this with things. I didn't want it to just look like it's this big, I don't even know what you call this, block chart? I don't know. But I'll just pre-filled it with some ideas. Of course, the Sony's next, because dun, they're in there, man. They're in there right now. Of course, the Sony's next. So that will be, I've already put its price in there. There's things I could fill in with this now to do with the Sony, but I don't think it's fair. I need to live with it for a little bit first. But when I first fired these up, I was well happy. So yeah, anyway. And then things like the Media Legend, the JLC7s, because the stuff out of my car, I've sold that stuff now. That's going into another car. So when they come out, what I'm probably going to do for a few days is I'm probably going to put them in this, because they'll take 6.5 minutes to do, and listen to them, and then I can rate them as well. So these don't have to be speakers that I'm necessarily interested in. It can be any three-way set. As long as it's a full three-way set with good UK support, then I'm interested in listening to them and comparing them in my own way, whether you want to, you know, hear it or not. The Audison Voce three-way, which is she's an old girl right now, so you know, it's been around a long time, but still a hitter, still works, you know. So maybe have that on there. I think that's around the 570, 580. Maybe a little bit more now, mark. So yeah, and then I've got Morel down the bottom. Morel have got about 800,000 three-way sets of speakers, ranging from about 5 or 6 grand down to about 500 quid. So I have no idea where to throw the dart at that one. I'll have to weigh it up and have a look. If you're watching and there's a particular set that, you know, I've just pre-filled them with some odd, you know, things, and you think there's a set that you'd like to see tested, then just let me know. Just comment on it. Our comments section isn't regulated. I look at it sometimes because it's a time thing. Do you know what I mean? But I will look at it, and I will, you know, take on board some of those specs, some of those ideas, and we can go from there. If I can't do it, then I'll tell you, and I'll tell you why. And I might include in each sort of upcoming video of these tests, if someone's asked something that I can't do, I'll give you an explanation. Hopefully this makes sense, okay? Like I say, this is it's all subjective. It's obviously subjective. This is my opinion of the way these things work. You know, there might be something that you're thinking is categorically missing from my chart, but that's about it for me. I think that's how I feel that they've been in the van as well. Stellar performers. Anyway, yeah. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of this process, because even if you don't want to hear it, I'm just enjoying it anyway, so I'm going to do it. You know, if you don't like it, then I just don't need to shoot it, but I'm just going to carry on doing it, because, yeah, who doesn't want that experience? What a great job I've got, eh? Sorry. Anyway, let's go. I'm Carl, it's a studio in car, and this is episode 2 of the three-way comparisons test, which is evolving into a multi three-way comparison test, which is just great fun.